What's going on, everybody? Kalip's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks for the BLU F92e 5G to help you make the most of the camera setup. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description, where I will be linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So first things first, I want to show you a quick way to actually get to the camera itself. Now, of course, opening the camera app is easy enough, but if you're doing something else on your phone, maybe you're browsing the web, for example, and you want to quickly get to your camera, instead of going to your home screen, no matter what you're doing on your phone, all you have to do is double press the power key like this, and it opens right up. Now we're going to try that one more time, this time with the display locked. And there we go. So as you can see, definitely a great shortcut to have. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to get to the macro camera. For this, from the main camera screen, go to the More tab right here. And then from here, macro mode is right here. And with this mode, you can get some nice close-up detailed images. Now, I will say this is not really the best macro camera in the world. I have seen quite a bit better even in this price range. But that being said, if you do like to get those close-up images, it definitely is a nice feature to have, especially considering there are even some phones that are more expensive than this one, like the OnePlus Nord N300 5G, for example, that don't even have the feature at all. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to change your aspect ratio. Now, by default, like pretty much any smartphone camera, the aspect ratio is going to be 4:3, but there are some other options. To get to these, go to Settings, and then from here, go to where it says Picture Size. As you can see, you can choose between 4:3, full, which in the case of this phone is going to be 20:9, 4:3 at 12 megapixels, so slightly lower quality, but also smaller file sizes, and then the same thing for full at 7 megapixels. Now, speaking of which, when you're in normal photo mode, keep in mind that despite having a 50 megapixel camera, when you take a picture, by default, it doesn't use the camera's full power. That being said though, I'm going to show you how you can. To do this, what you're going to do is go to More. Then from here, go to where it says 50 megapixels. Now with this mode, you can get some nice, really high quality photos using the camera's full 50 megapixels. That being said though, keep in mind, despite being higher quality, the file size is slightly larger, and honestly in my experience, this really doesn't make a big difference because considering this phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage, not to mention microSD card expansion, you would seriously have to be taking a lot of photos for it to really make a difference. But that being said, if you do want to save some space, then you might not want to use this mode. Now, speaking of camera modes, let's take a look at what else this camera has. So if we go to the More section, we have night mode. So if you want to take pictures in the dark, and in my experience, night mode works really well when you're in open spaces. So if you're outside, for example, definitely a real good thing to have. There's beauty mode, which is basically like a built-in filter kind of thing. You can also make GIFs. Then there's Pro mode, which in case you're wondering, Pro mode does also have RAW mode in it, which I know a lot of people have asked me about. So if you go to Pro mode, hit the settings. As you can see, RAW is right here. So if you ever want to use that, there's panorama, which is a pretty common feature now, slow motion, time lapse, macro mode and 50 megapixel mode, which we already went over, and then intelligent scanning. So if you want to scan barcodes, QR codes, stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. We definitely do get a pretty good variety of features here, so definitely nice to see. So now we're going to go over some other features you might be wondering about. So starting with the top bar here, right next to flash, we got this thing called HDR. Now, long story short, HDR basically enhances a photo's light and dark dynamics. So if you're taking a picture of, say, something outside in the sun and there's shade, it's basically going to make the dark parts a little bit darker and the light parts a little bit more vivid. Now, there's probably more to it than that, but essentially, in my experience, it typically does make things look a little bit better. But as you can see, it is off by default. So if you want to turn it on, tap this icon. You have the choice of turning it to auto, or you can turn it to on all the time. So definitely nice to have a few different options. In addition to this AI button right here is basically a scene optimizer. Now, in my experience, it doesn't really make a big difference whether it's on or not, but if you want, you can tap the icon, and when it's highlighted like that, then it is on. And in case you're wondering what this is basically just the filter button. So a few different choices down here. And then if we go to settings, keep in mind by default, when you take pictures, there is going to be a blue watermark, which I feel like for the average person, you probably don't want this. I use it sometimes on different phones just when I'm taking a bunch of test photos in a row with different devices, just so I don't get them confused. But even then, I don't really use it that often. So I imagine the average user who isn't constantly taking pictures with multiple different devices is probably not going to want a blue watermark in the corner. So if you want, you can tap this icon and it's going to turn it off. There's also camera mute. So by default, if you take a picture, as you can see, it does make a bit of a noise, maybe not quite as obnoxious as a lot of other phones, but still, if you want to mute it, you can by tapping this icon. Then there's touch shooting, so if you're taking a picture at more of an awkward angle, like a selfie for example, this is going to be really useful. Basically what it does is allows you to take a picture by tapping anywhere on the screen. So for example, if I tap right here, As you can see, that just took a picture. So yeah, definitely nice if you have to use one hand to take a picture. There's the timer, so if you want to do something hands-free, like a tripod kind of picture, stuff like that. I actually use it for a lot of my thumbnails, for example. But if you tap the icon, it's going to turn it on. And if you hit this little arrow right here, you can choose between 2 seconds and 10 seconds. Then there's the grid line, definitely a great feature. Makes it a lot easier to center stuff. I personally have it on every phone I use. I don't know, some people don't like it, but I personally think it's really useful. You can also change the grid a bit. So if you hit this arrow, you can choose between a regular grid and these swirly things. I honestly don't know what they do, but kind of looks interesting. Then we got volume key feature. So by default, if you hit either volume key, it's basically going to take a picture or record a video. So if we go like this, but if we go back to that button, tap on this, you can choose between shutter, volume, so maybe you're listening to music when you're taking pictures, you can always do that, or zoom. So if we do zoom, volume up is going to zoom in, and volume down is going to zoom out. And then finally, if you've changed all the settings and you want everything to go back to normal, what you can do is hit reset right here, hit OK, and now everything is going to be right back to the default. And finally, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to change your video resolution. Now with this phone, we actually have a max recording quality of 2K in the rear camera, which is better than most phones in this price range. By default, it will be in 2K, but we do have a few different options. So to change your video resolution, you do have to be in video mode. From here, go to settings. And as you can see, video quality is right here. If you tap on this, by default, it will be in 2K, but keep in mind, the front-facing camera does have a max recording quality of 1080p. So if you're using that camera, 2K won't be an option. But in addition to this, you can record in 1080p, 720p, or 480p. And then if you want, you can actually mute the microphone. So if you're recording a video but you're only making B-roll or something like that, you can mute the microphone so that way you don't have to deal with sound. But this concludes my camera tips and tricks video for the BLU F92e 5G. Again, if you do want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out the description where I am linking to several other videos about it, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Khalipa's Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.